quickly. So the Zoom room is live. Zoom room is recording, which means I don't know where my captions have gone, but we're recording, we're live, so your phone should be zipped up. It should be put away. Bless you. Perfect. We're going to talk a little bit about this new submission method. So I will be honest, as a new teacher, I am very behind on grading your guys' assignments. You do not have an accurate update of how your grade's looking because I'm still working through a lot of the stuff for Unit 4. So what I have come up with is a new way for you guys to submit your assignments. Instead of submitting a single zip, or instead of submitting a zip folder for every single assignment that you guys do or project, mostly just the assignments because projects is good to be separated. I'm gonna have you submit one single route, kind of like a notebook check as compared to a bunch of worksheets at the end of the unit that contains all of the files. So what does that actually look like though? If you go to your if you go to the agenda for the week, there is a zip folder of the file that I'm about to show off, this P2 Unit 5 zip, but I'll walk you guys through that in the Zoom room right now. So what I mean by instead of submitting me a root folder with a styles and whatever every single time, what I want us to transition to is something more like this. Oops, that's the wrong one. Let me open it up real quick. So I go to my admin and then open up Unit 5. Okay, so since we're live, you guys should be listening. You should have your connections pages closed while I'm Zoom rooming. Basically, the gist of what I want you guys to do is create a single index folder that kind of acts like a table of contents. So if we look at it here, this is going to have a link to all of the different HTML pages or assignments that we're going to be working on. So let's say for Unit 5, Advanced CSS Index page. Oops, we'll get to that here in just a second. Well, I'll get to it in just a second. This index page serves as a table of contents for all of the individual HTML pages that relate to the Canvas assignments. So instead of creating a whole new route for 5.1, you'll just create this HTML page and a corresponding style sheet that is going to link back to your table of contents that when you submit this single folder at the end of the unit is going to contain each of the assignments or the exercises that I had you guys do for that unit. So for example, here's my index page that you can decorate however you want. You can put whatever you'd like on this index page. But what you need to do differently is keep each of these links on your navigation relevant to what the actual Canvas assignment was. So for example, let's say on 5.1, the assignment was to create a 2x4 table, and you would just put that inside of the HTML here. It comes from your table of contents. Let's say 5.2 was to create two separate lists inside of your HTML. That's going to be a separate HTML file inside of your main root. So 5.1, we have all of our stuff from Canvas, the things that I'm asking you to do, the things that I'm demonstrating in the Zoom room or in the PowerPoints, that's all contained in an HTML file instead of in its own root folder, HTML file, style sheet, etc. It's all contained within one major root. This is going to be kind of confusing because we don't have a new assignment to start today, but I want to give you guys a walkthrough of what it should look like when it's complete, so you have a kind of an idea of what I'm going for here. So let's say 5.1, I needed to create a table. There's my table. 5.2, I needed to create some lists. There's my lists. Let's go to 5.3. 5.3, we had to experiment with something called the iframe tag once it decides to load. Any day now.
iframe doesn't work on my computer.
Oh, weird. Okay, I'll take a look at that. But 5.3, we're talking about iframe. We're talking about linking stuff embedded. And 5.4, we're talking about images or whatever. When I grade, instead of having to unzip every single one of your folders and delay your accuracy in grading and put more work on me, instead what you can do is submit one single kind of chapter, kind of a summary of all the assignments that you've done with an index page, linking them to each of the different HTML files. And it's all contained within one single root. So the way that would work, instead of submitting a whole root folder for 5.4, a whole root folder for 5.3, whatever, what I'm going to do instead, if I get it pulled up here real quick, I thought I had it. No, I don't. Okay. Instead, what I'll have y'all do is zip and submit a single big root, kind of like a chapter summary. It's gonna have this index page to help me get around to understand which assignments are which. My Canvas is really struggling right now. There we go. Like for example, if we go into here, we go to student view. Hi, good morning. On unit 5, you don't have to submit anything today, and I will update this with rubrics and actual points, but you'll submit your one root folder with all of your assignments for the week or for the unit right here. So that when I go to grade, I only have one file to download and look through, and you only have one file to upload and submit. This is an effort to make everything just a teeny bit easier, and also give you guys the opportunity to flex some of your web design skills on this index page as a way to kind of decorate it and have a little bit more fun with some extra space like this. Does that make sense in gist, in basic like breakdown? So instead of submitting worksheets, like kind of what you've been doing, imagine this was one worksheet, this was one worksheet, this was one worksheet. Instead, what we'll do is end of unit kind of binder checks, notebook checks that contain all of the work that you did during the week or the unit. And there's a little nav bar to get around to each of those specific pages. Like for example, right here, I have all my HTML pages. I have all my style sheets for each of my HTML pages all in one location instead of in 5 or 4 different root folders. Does that make sense? So what I want you guys to do today, after I introduce you to some of the stuff we're talking about in the PowerPoint, I want you guys to make a root folder for Unit 5. And then once we get an actual assignment towards Wednesday during our block day, I'll show you how to set that up inside of that root so that it all makes sense with actual examples. This is just kind of a trailer for how I want things to change, a new way for us to experiment. Yeah, so that is the new folder setup that I want you guys to kind of keep in mind to make things a little bit easier on all of us. So if you're interested in that, that is in the announcements in our thread for the week. You can download that and see my folder setup and folder strategy. If you want a reference, if you want some notes, there's that zip right there. You just need to unzip it and run it from there. Okay, so let's talk about the next part of our day, the Unit 5 intro on advanced CSS. So it's going to be one of our last units of the year. We're a lot more quickly coming to the end of the semester. Sucks because I'm going to miss you guys. I'm going to miss seeing your hard work and your development skills. But such is the school life, right? Hold on, I got to get my PowerPoint up. So, advanced CSS. We're finally out of the woods with Unit 4, our quite thorough Unit 4. We're going to talk about Unit 5 now. So, miscellaneous advanced CSS. This is just some a couple things that we're going to be covering this week. We're not going to get all through this today, instruction-wise, but bless you. This will be kind of what we're focusing on for this first half of Unit 5. So Unit 5 is in 2 parts. So again, I'm using a previous teacher's Canvas. I'm adapting it for this class, so they went a different direction than we did. We're aware that you can load a file in the same directory by naming it, right? This is our local, our relative paths right here with an image SRC. You can just put the file name inside of the quotes and it's going to appear like normal. We're used to that. Something new that you can do is just adding a slash to that file name, to that relative path, your SRC or your href, which means you're going to go one layer down inside of a root folder. When I say down, what I mean is if I pull up my web design admin folder here, this has got all of my experiments, examples, stuff like that. This is my root. Web design admin is my root. All of these are subfolders inside of my web design admin root. When I say go down a level, you can think of it like a staircase. The root folder is the top of the staircase. We've taken one step down into P1 Flex. We've taken another step down into the style sheet, and we're on the 3rd step right here. You can see that each step along the way, each quest or each step on the journey, the quest that my computer's taking is in order. So we have root, sub, second sub. It's all in order, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. What you can do is inside of a like an image subfolder, you can put another subfolder for a specific type of images like PNGs, JPEGs, AVIFs, SFGs, WebP. There's all types of different image file types. But if you want to get that granular with your organization, you can add that to your file path as well, just by naming the subfolder that it's inside of and then a slash with the image next. Okay, we're pretty much used to this. We've seen this before. This is not anything exactly new, but it is a good kind of thing to keep in mind that you use these slashes for those relative paths. The new thing that I'm going to introduce, which is very specifically used for background images, is the idea of ... slash. Now, I've explained entirely throughout this class that you cannot look outside of a root folder. For example, this flexstyle.css, the only thing that it can see is other types or other file types inside of this root folder. ... slash unlocks the ability for your files to search outside of their roots to something located in a different root folder. This is especially useful for CSS, especially the background image property. So I'll give you an example of how that works right now. Let's say I'm inside of my web design admin folder, which has access to all of these different types of files, this whole mess of different data and different things like that. Let's say I'm in my position HTML page here. Actually, I want to do the CSS because it's a better example. Let's close all this out. Let's say I'm working on my website called Sections. And inside of my sections, I want to add a background image. Because I can't look, my sections.css cannot look outside of my style subfolder that contains it. I can't actually access any of these image files in any of my other subfolders. So if let me see if I even have an image. Okay, cool, I do. All right, so run index dot sections. This is what it looks like, right? If I wanted to add a background image, which we'll talk about here in just a second, if I wanted to add a background image, I would either have to put the background image inside of the style subfolder, which would make a mess mixing the file types together. You want to keep them organized. We don't want to do that. So with background images, we're going to take advantage of this .. slash, and I'll show you how to do this URL setup thing because it's like Zelda links. It's very specific. If I wanted to add a background image to this entire site, I would have to use .. slash. So background image is a rule that you assign to the body tag, and you go background - image. That's our property. Body is our selector. Now, after background image, the first thing you need to add to the values section is a URL, a universal resource locator. And then you need a parentheses, and then you need quotes. There's a whole bunch of setup that you need for a URL to work in the way that we intend. Now, I can't set a background image because there is no background image contained within this subfolder. My style sheet cannot look past this folder. I do know that inside of my Unit 5 folder, inside of SRC, there is a JPEG here that I can work with. What I do inside the quotes is I go ... slash. That gives me access to folders outside of my root here. So, which is of course not working in the way that I need it to right now. Try this again. Let me open up your folder. Sorry, this worked in first period. Let's go with folder here. Okay, so this is your second period web design folder with all of the assignments that we've done so far. Let's say I'm on 4.1 and I want to add a background image to my 4.1 page here. So we'll click on that. This is, let me close my other, okay, we're gonna run this. This is what my 4.1 looks like currently, right? If I wanted to add a background image, I'll show you how to do that. Because I have my second period web design folder open with all of my other subfolders, I can go into this style sheet, 4.1 style, take out this background color, and I'm going to add the background - image. So then I'm going to do URL, not your URL, parentheses, quotes. And if I were to try to type something, because this is the only file type inside of the subfolder, it's not going to find anything. However, if I add that ... slash, why is it not working? I need this to behave, dude. Hold on. Sorry. This keeps not working the way that I need it to. Okay. All right, let's see here. All right, let's do it this way because it works in first periods, but not seconds for some reason. Okay, so we have an image. We can go ... slash. Now, if I go ... slash, even though it's outside of this 4.1 root, it has access to every file inside of my inside of whatever folder I have open in HTML or in VS Code, I mean. So even though this is limited to the 4.1, if I wanted to add an image, let's say from 4.5, which doesn't have any images, nor 4.4, let's go 4.7.3, which also doesn't have any images. There it is. Okay, cool. So I can go into .. on my source or my high ref, and then go subfolder B Blakeney 4.7.3, and then src, and then download.jpg. If I were to now run this page, it has that file placed inside of it, even though in my root folder for 4.1, if I go to 4.1 real quick, go to 4.1, 4.1 does not contain any images at all. But because of .. we've allowed it to look outside of the root for another file of a similar type. So I think it just wasn't working because the CSS didn't want it to, it decided it didn't want to. So keep this in mind that the .. in the background image is something we're going to be practicing some more. This is just kind of an example of how it works, and that it is relative to the CSS file. So .. makes it go back a step from whatever CSS file you have associated with it. You can also put a background image to an individual element like a div, but you could use any element technically that has width and height. Okay. Background images by default are going to repeat both vertically and horizontally to fill the page. You can change that setting with background repeats, which I'll show you in a second here. And by default, the image will start at the top left. We have that point of origin right up here, just like all of our HTML stuff. It's going to start at that origin. You can change this by setting the background position, which is kind of like position relative, to specify where the top left corner of your image should be. So the background position is going to offset with an X and a Y. So it's going to offset it 75 pixels on the horizontal, on the east-west axis, and 100 pixels on the vertical, the north-south axis. So it's going to be over 75 and up or down 100. I'm not sure exactly. But you can change the size of the image with background size. You can make this width and height, for example. And you can use background size cover to stretch the element or stretch the picture to fill the entire page. I'll give you more examples on that here in a second. We're going to talk about float with this part of Unit 5. Float is a way to make your pages and your elements on your page more responsive. You can make an element hug the left side of the window or the right side of the window, kind of similar to a flex div. And float will cause other elements to wrap around the floating element, kind of like it's floating on top of your web page. Anyway, we'll talk about changing list styles. We'll talk about ways to, I think some of you have already done this. But I will show you how to do this for this unit of CSS specifically. And we're also going to talk about list style images, especially with backgrounds. And you can specify a list style type as well as a backup in case the image isn't available. But we're going to talk about all that this week. We're also going to talk about something called pseudo classes, which is a way to get even more specific with your CSS and add a little bit of conditional. So if a certain thing happens, if a certain thing is met, then this CSS will apply. We'll talk about some of these. And we'll also talk about ways to center elements as well as vertically align them so that they are behaving in a little bit better way than initially thought. So this is the focus on Unit 5, Part 1 of 2. Is going to be all types of different stuff. Once we finish, or I guess we finish this PowerPoint, so I can make it available if you're interested. But yeah. All right. So real quick, let's talk about the rest of our stuff today. The 4.7 deadline, remember, is January 5th, and you can submit it by this Friday with no late penalty. So if you want to use the remainder of this period to work on that, that's fine too. The only thing I need you guys to have done today is to have your Unit 5 main folder, your Unit 5 root folder set up. So if I go into Unit 5, does not have to be this complete, obviously, because we have not done this many assignments yet. But you should have your index page and your Unit 5 folder set up so that you can build on it as this week progresses. This will make more sense once we have an actual assignment to do. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before I start wandering, before you guys have some work time on 4.7? We good? All right, good deal. Thank you guys for listening. I know it's kind of boring, but it's change, and change is good. Okay, anyway, that root folder is available if you're curious on how I set it up. I'm going to close up the Zoom room real quick, help you guys get those set up. You need to have your root folder completed by the end of the period. Doesn't have to have anything in it, but just set up and ready to go. for tomorrow when we get into some more of our CSS and have some actual assignments to do. Okay, cool. You guys are good. Thank you for listening. I'm gonna close this up and I'll help you as you need.